our Israeli Affairs Chair. She's also Vice President of Administration and a former president. And we're most excited that she's newly appointed as the newest member of the International Council of Jewish Women's Status of Women Committee. Carol, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Elaine. Good news is our speaker has just arrived, and I wonder if we want to take a picture now, Eileen. I'll let you guys work that one out. So anyway, I just want to say good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. Before I introduce our illustrious moderator for today, I'm just going to reiterate, please take a moment to type your name and your location, wherever you are on the planet Earth, in the Zoom participants list. I'm already happy to see that we have people from across the USA and from the UK and Israel. During the presentation, please feel free to write your questions in the chat, and we will do our best. I can hear somebody. Okay. Please feel free to write your questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible at the end of today's speaker program. And the speakers will be around to answer all our questions. And it now gives me great joy to introduce our moderator for today, my friend and colleague, Liron Peleg-Hadomi. A word about Liron. She's the National Council of Jewish Women's representative in Israel. Her role is to oversee all programming and relationships on the ground. With passion and expertise, Liron's goal is to empower and enable Israeli women to have an equal voice in the direction of their nation, and to advance gender equality, to strengthen civil liberties, democracy, and peace efforts. Liron, we are with you in this epic undertaking. So Liron Peleg-Hadomi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carol and Bergen and everyone else in Bergen County section. It is, and it was a pleasure working with all of you to plan and to make this webinar happen, and for your commitment to NCJW work in Israel. It's a pleasure, and I really don't take that ever for granted, and I'm thankful for that. So I'm very, very excited to be here today with all of you. Thank you, everyone who took the time to join us today for a fabulous and inspiring panel. As Carol said, I'm Liron Peleg-Hadomi, and I'm NCJW representative in Israel over the last 3.5 years. In Israel, NCJW works in a gender lens. We work with NGOs and civil society organizations to empower and support the most vulnerable population of women and children. We work with all population in Israel, religious and non-religious, Jewish and Arabs, in all the country. Over the last 70 years, NCJW works in Israel to support NGOs. We're just gonna celebrate this year 20 years for establishing the first ever Women and Gender Studies program at Tel Aviv University. And 2 years ago, we started a program called Connecting for Impact. If some of you came 2 years ago to Washington Institute, you may saw the first cohort that came of amazing leaders that are doing an important work on different issues on gender equality and in families in Israel. And this year we opened the second cohort that focused on violence against women. We have 19 CEOs. 2 of them are here today that you will meet, Samah, Salaime, and Neve. And beside that, we're continuing to do the IGP, the Israel Granting Program, that a lot of you are support of that, and we're thankful for the opportunity to help and strengthen the NGOs in Israel who works on women issues. I would like to start and tell a little bit about the first panelists that will meet today. We have 3 inspiring panelists. As I said, I'm sure you'll be amazed by the work they're doing day by day and sometimes nights. Debbie Gross is the founder and the director of Tahel, the Crisis Center for Religious Women and Children, which serves women and children throughout Israel. Debbie has developed an educational workshop program to give children and teenagers the skills to recognize and prevent sexual abuse and domestic violence. She is an expert in training courses and workshops for rabbis and other religious leaders on how to intervene in cases of domestic violence and sexual abuse. She travels around the world developing programs to help community prevent abuse. So before we hear from Debbie, we have a short video on Tahel and her work. So please.
Tahel, Crisis Center for Religious Women and Children. We're here for you, for every woman, for every child. When we started Tahel 25 years ago, if a little girl was raped, her mother wouldn't take her not to a doctor and not for psychological help because she would be petrified what that disclosure would do to her future. Today, that mother in the Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox community can call our hotline. She can call 24 hours a day. She can stay totally anonymous. She can get help for herself. She can get help for her child.
בתפקידיי השונים ברבנות, נוכחתי לדעת עד כמה חשוב מרכז הסיוע. איזה מענה אמיתי ונכון הוא נותן למי שזקוקות למצוא בית חם.
We do more than that. We accompany our victims. We advocate for our victims throughout the whole process. If she has to go to the police or the courts or the hospitals, we're there alongside throughout the journey. But more than that, we at Tahel believe prevention is really the key. It's not enough to help a victim after she's been hurt. We have to prevent the violence. We have to prevent the abuse.
We provide workshops for children from the age of 4 and up. We give them the tools to prevent abuse. During the workshop, they learn 3 rules. Say no, run away, tell your mommy or daddy.
We have a Machon Hachshara, an institute for training. We teach teachers how to recognize the signs of abuse, and we teach rabbis how to intervene in cases of abuse. We have conferences, international conferences, where people come all over the world to learn these topics.
I feel that my job and my work makes the world a little bit of a better place.
Tahel, hotline, advocacy, workshops, Machon Hachshara. We can make a change. Come join our dream. Tahel.
Thank you so much. And Debbie, the floor is yours. Please.
Okay, so it's really a pleasure to see all of you and to be here with you. As you saw from our movie, we work throughout Israel, in particularly with the ultra-Orthodox and even the extremely ultra-Orthodox Hasidic population. And our work is really to give a voice to the victims of abuse. We work with women and children throughout the country. Now, one of the things that you've heard about, I'm sure, all over the world is the impact that Corona has had on violence against women. Now, when we had a first lockdown, over that first month, we had 557 calls to our center. We couldn't keep up with all the calls. And some of the calls were from women whose husbands had never been abusive. But what we saw during the Corona is that when you take away the network of support, when families are crowded together, when a husband doesn't have his usual way of going out, that can also induce him to be violent when maybe in the past he wasn't. Now, what we did is we right away decided that we had to come up with more options for the women. So first of all, we moved to 24/7 live, which means even on Shabbat, even on the Sabbath, our hotline is running 24/7. And the next thing we realized is you had so many women and young women who were trapped in their homes with the abusers. And what we realized is they needed another way to reach out. So we started opening a WhatsApp hotline as well, so that somebody could write us in her worst and most difficult hour of need and the person next to her may not know that she's calling us, that she's in touch with us. So this is some of the work we've been doing right now. Now, I don't know how much you've been keeping up with the big stories in Israel over the past week, but one of the biggest stories in the religious community is Yehuda Meshi Zahav, who was the founder of Zaka, who won the Israel Prize and lit the torch on Independence Day. Stories have finally come forward that he has abused children, women, teenagers to a horrific extent. I just want to tell you something personally. For 20 years, I have watched this man get prize after prize, and I couldn't say a word. I heard stories for 20 years, but the victims didn't come forward. Their friends would come forward or their family members, and they couldn't convince the victims to come forward. And therefore, we couldn't go to the police even with these stories, because unless you have a victim, you can't do anything with it. And I think that's really what we're all trying to do. We're trying to give voices to women and teenagers and children who are suffering. We're also trying to prevent abuse. And there's many ways that abuse can be prevented, but I think we all know the most important ingredient is education. And what we're trying to do is fight in the Knesset that every child and every teenager should be given yearly a workshop. Maybe if we can change a little bit about how young men treat young women, we can prevent some of the violence. And maybe if we can talk to little children in a way that is appropriate for their religiosity or their cultural sensitivity, we can make them aware that if something happens to them, they have to tell an adult. Now, over the past few months, we've seen more and more cases of really mental health issues arising as a result of the corona. And what we've decided to do is open resilience courses. And we've been going around the country giving resilience courses, particularly to women who are in need. I fell in love with Zoom. I want you to know, until last March, I didn't know what Zoom was. But what has Zoom enabled us to do? First of all, it's enabled us to reach women all over the world. I'm giving lectures constantly to countries that I would never even be able to get to. But it has enabled something else. We're running support groups over Zoom for victims of abuse. And I have to tell you, when they told us that this is our only way to do it because of the corona, I was hesitant. How do I run a support group for victims when they're not next to me, when I can't really feel them? And the outpouring of women who have wanted these groups has been amazing. And we are currently running 10 support groups for victims of abuse, where religious and Haredi, ultra-Orthodox women from all over Israel are joining the groups. And for the first time, they're telling their stories. The other day, I gave a lecture over Zoom, and one woman raised her hand. She was 82 years old, and she said, "Can I have the floor?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "This is the first time I am telling anybody, but I was abused as a little girl." And people who didn't have the ability to maybe tell their story are somehow connecting over the Zoom. So we're seeing that even though this is a crisis, in other ways, it's maybe allowing us to find different ways to work. Now, when Liron first approached me about the NCJW Connecting for Impact program, she asked me why it interests me. And I thought, wow, to be together with young feminists from all over Israel and to maybe be able to tell them a little bit about what I learned over the past 40 years, maybe pass the torch on to these young women, I thought that was fabulous. And what's even better is as I'm in this wonderful program, I'm learning from them. And what can be nicer than women learning from women and women joining hands with other women to make lives better? I think we all agree that every woman, every teenager, every child should have a place where they can turn to for support. And I think we also all realize that we have to make this place of support a place that will meet their specific needs, that will understand their sensitivities. And that's what we're trying to do in Tahel. My son always says to me, Ima, you've been trying so hard to make change and the world is just getting worse. And I don't look at it that way. I think every little bit that we're doing is bringing us all closer to Tikkun Olam. And it's just so amazing to join together with all of you in NCJW and believing that maybe next year you can make another webinar. And maybe next year you'll invite me and maybe I'll be able to say, we no longer have abuse in Israel. Our women and children are safe. Wouldn't that be a fantastic dream? Thank you.
Wow, Debbie, thank you so much. I can hear Debbie so many times, and every time I hear new stories and get inspired, and we feel so lucky that we have Debbie in our cohort of Connecting for Impact, because she is a role model of experience, of smart, and she brings hope and optimistic. So thank you for that so much, Debbie. Our next speaker is Samah Salaime. Samah is the director of Wahat al-Salam, Neve, Shalom Communication and Development Department, a social worker, community activist, and feminist. She's the founder and director of Arab Women in the Center, NAAM, an NGO which seeks to promote the status of women in cities of Ramle, Lod, and Jaffa, and to work on gender-based violence in the community, particularly in the Arab societies. Samah was chosen twice as Yediot Ahronot, one of the 10 most influential social activists in Israel by the Israeli national newspaper. She just right now actually won the award of Rappaport, another very prestigious, last year actually, a very prestigious award for women in Israel. She's activist, as I said, in the community of the Arab community, and she's a role model to everyone. Before we hear her, she also has a wonderful video that we can share, please.
My name is Samah Salaime. I'm a social worker. I am a woman, as you see. I'm the founder and the director of this place. The whole story begins actually in 2006. I was a social worker in Ramle. I worked with the young girls in that city. I was a witness of several cases of honor killing. And in that year, I lost 3 of the young girls that I treated. We decided to understand what happened to women when they fall in this, victims as in this crime. And in that year, we started to think about one place to treat women and trying to help young girls who face domestic violence and trying to prevent the next crime. I do believe that women are one holistic human being, and in NAAM we see this whole picture of the story of this woman and how can we help her from all kinds of places.
אחרי כמה פגישות, תמיכות וכל מיני, התחלתי לחשוב וגם להתחיל לשתף פעולה, ואחרי זה גם התגלה להם שזה גם מהרקע שלי, שאני גם חווה את האלימות הזו, כאילו לא רציתי להעמיס על עצמי דברים שאני לא יכולה להתמודד איתם.
One of the most, emotional moments that I have in this place, it was last year when a girl called Amani came to this place, and she told me that I helped her when she was 16. She told me that she is now doing her master's degrees and she wants to give back. She wants to volunteer in Naam, and each woman in Naam have a moment of crisis and moment of giving back.
Thank you. Samah, please. I'm so glad to have you here.
Can't hear her. Needs to unmute.
You okay? No.
I think he has to unmute, maybe?
Yeah. Okay. Do you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry that I'm with my iPhone. For some reason, I lost the network here. So I'm sorry for the this technical challenge. But we, as a feminist, you know that we deal with everything. So so we will deal with that minor problem as well. So I'm here to tell you about my work as a social worker, as an Arab woman inside the Israeli society. And what we are trying to do as a group of feminist organizations. Sometimes we have problems and challenges inside the Arab society, and sometimes, like Debbie says, it's related to a specific group of people or some group of women in specific ethnic background or religious background. But we, as a feminist, we have also shared struggles against gender-based violence. And Naam was based 10 years ago. I founded the Naam AWC. It's Arab Women Center. The organization, it's very small, but very big mouth, that one of the mayors said. We are very vocal organization. That means that we protest a lot and we do a lot of advocacy. And we, one of the main goals of AWC Naam is to bring this voice to the Israeli public, the voice of the Arab women who are victims of social, domestic, if you want, romantic abuse, and this is and to reframe the terminology and to fight what's so-called honor killing. It's gender-based crimes, and we use the term femicide. And we want all the partners inside the nonprofit organization, inside the Arab society, and also in the government and the formal platform to see us. And I have to give you 1 minute. So I have guests. I'm sorry. So anyway, Naam is now leading the struggle against femicide in the Arab society. We lose 10 women each year. The corona crisis actually make us lose 16 victims. 70% of the victims this year were Arab women. In Israel, 20 women were killed, 23. And generally, we are 50% of the victims. That means that the social services and the women organization have to deal with a lot of, increasing numbers of women who facing abuse, especially under the lockdown and what's happened in the corona. In many terms, we have to replace actually the formal social services that did not react fastly, and we have we call it Women Rights Center, and we converted our service to the virtual sphere, bringing and we simply give our volunteers iPhones and say to connect the client with the women and to be available there in WhatsApp and every mean, and they don't have to come in physically into the center. So this is one of the main projects, the Women's Rights Center. We based on on volunteering. So we have around 40 volunteers, social workers, students, advocacy and legal advice. We give legal advice as well. And we work also not in the Corona, of course, but usually we work with high schools, and we help high schools in the Arab society to deal with gender equality education. For many years, we were forbidden actually to get into the public education system. And 2 years ago, everybody knows now that we have to deal with this issue in gender equality in education as soon as the kids get into the school. Hopefully also we will do some work in primary school. Naam is leading, as I told you before, in the protesting and advocacy and arranging shared struggles with Jewish feminist organizations. And we don't have problem with that. I know that we have a lot of unique issues inside the Arab society, but gender-based violence, from my point of view, is a shared struggle, and we have to unite. Anyway, we are very small and underfunding, and we all struggle to survive as nonprofits. So we can't afford, to fight alone. So we have this coalition, and we manage to deal with lots of cases, problems, and to bring the gender-based violence to the media and the mainstream media in Hebrew and English, and also in Arabic. One of the beautiful things, because we believe in, and I don't know if you know, but Naam in English, in Arabic means yes. So lots of feminist organizations are very anti-something, and we are pro including and shared, and we want to find a place for anyone who wants to contribute to this struggle. So we welcome any help from the institutions, from religious institutions, and other potential partners. So we one of my ways to collaborate is to join groups like what we do with Liron. And I'm in this field for many years, and I thought that I know everything is going on in terms of fighting gender-based violence in Israel, but it seems to me that I have very important potential partners around me that I don't know that they exist. Like Debbie, for example, I know what's happening inside the Haredian community, but I don't have contacts there in my ongoing life. So in this group with Liron and this project, I'm learning what other amazing, powerful women is doing, and hopefully we can collaborate someday. So this is a long journey that we just started. I hope that it will be fruitful, and I will learn a lot. As I know myself and my colleagues, we will find a way to do things together. And we have so many things to change around us, and I think that if we decided to do so, we can do it. So maybe I should stop now and give Liron again, and I'm again sorry for the inconvenient environment that I'm streaming from. So
it's okay. It's okay. Thank you so much, Samah, and we'll come back with you because there are so many questions that are already collected in the chat. So we'll come back to you after we finish the panel. And again, Samah is such a long time activist in the field, and everywhere when there is a demonstration and where there is a fight for women's rights, she'll be there. When there is a fight for women, for Jewish and Arab women together, she will be there. So I personally learned from her a lot. So thank you so much for everything you do. Our third speaker is Dana Meitav. Dana Meitav is the executive director of the Israel Women's Network since November 2020. Previously, she held several legal policy, promoting, and strategic planning positions in the Civil Services Commission, among them Director of the Gender Equality Department at the Commission. Dana started her career as a lawyer in the private sector and later moved to the National Labor Court. She graduated with honor in law and psychology from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. She also trained couples counselor, an artist, and a musician. You should read her, you should hear her music. Her first poetry book was published in 2015, and her first album was released just this year. So Dana, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll hear from you. And after that, we'll also see the beautiful film about IWN. So please.
Yes. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and I really appreciate your involvement and your interest in our work. I'm really from November, and not several months ago. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer almost 20 years. And before the IWN, I was in the Civil Service Commission. It's a government organization that is in charge of human resource issues and labor law. I started there as a team manager in the legal department, and then I advanced to positions in strategic development toward policy change. Among those positions, I was the director of the National Gender Equality department in the commission. It means that I was in charge of promoting women to high-ranking positions in the government, and also try to prevent sexual harassment. In the public service, we have about 80,000 employees, so it's really a big challenge. And I would like to tell you about the IWN. It's an independent nonprofit organization that was founded 37 years ago. Our mission is to promote women's rights in Israel, and it's really also a big challenge because the main problem in Israel that there are not enough women in high-ranking positions and not enough women in decision-making positions. For example, in our parliament, in the Knesset, we have elections next week, but in the last Knesset, there are only 25% from all the members of the Knesset that are women. It's really not enough. And we have only one party that there is women in the head of the list. And one of the problems when we don't have enough women in the position-making decisions, so our interests are not being considered, not being taken into consideration. And also it's about budgetary priorities. So how does the IWN tries to really make a difference and to change the situation? So we have several departments. One department is the lobby departments. The lobby department try to influence the policymakers, also in the government, also in the local authorities, and also in our parliament. We have the legal department that works toward promoting our goals by taking legal actions on fundamental issues in all courts in Israel, and all the way to the Israeli Supreme Court. And we also have a communication department that is responsible to try to raise the public awareness. As you know, the public awareness is really crucial in order to influence the policymakers. And also another department that we have is a department of lawyers that gives free legal aid in hotlines. It means a direct connection with women in the labor market. We have also line to Arabic women in Arabic, and also to Orthodox women. And in the last year, in the COVID-19 period, we helped 2,000 women that called us with problems about their employees, the employment and the organization that they work in. And as you know, the COVID-19 crisis really brought to light the pre-existent issues that women have been facing in the labor market. In Israel, in the last year, from all the people that lost their jobs, 20% of them were women. And it's really a big question, why does really the women are the most vulnerable employees in the Israeli labor market? There are a lot of problems, and I would like to speak with you about one of them that really influence also men and also women. It's the average work week in Israel. It is one of the longest in the OECD. And the research shows that the longer working hours result in low productivity, it's increased stress and health issues, and of course, less time with the family, less leisure time. And as we know, the gender roles, most of them are men. Men are the ones that stay a lot of hours in the work, and it means that women are the ones that are expected to be a lot of hours with the children. If we look at France, for example, in France, they shortened the work week from 38 to 35, and the productivity rose. So it really long hours, it's not good, not to the family, not to the wives, the men, the children, and the companies. So it's something that we must try to change. The IWN published a report with a lot of recommendations. And I want to speak with you about two of them. One of them is gender equality education. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Education doesn't see gender equality as a strategic goal. And because of that, there is really a problem in Israel. How can we change the gender tracking in order to change what's happening, the problem in the labor market? Because it starts from really early education. We'll try to promote it. I really want to promote it the next year. And another recommendation is try to push a law that will enable men to go to paternity leave together with their wives. Because now, when a child born, they go back to work after a few days. And really, it's the same gender tracking that they doesn't see themselves as a part of the raising the children and part of the effort of the family. And I would like to show you a short video that we prepared when we received, the IWN received the Human Rights Award from the New Israeli Fund in the UK. The award was given to us because of our efforts to stop the wave of violence against women in the Corona period, the COVID-19 period. As you know, in Israel, there were 4 lockdowns that, as we already heard, because of them, the violence against women more than doubled. And also the video shows our hotlines, as I said, and now we'll see the video.
can't be a democracy in the 21st century in 2020 without strong women's rights. About 2 weeks after the first lockdown started here in Israel in March, the Prime Minister office established roundtables regarding certain subjects, including how the corona pandemic affected and affects women here in Israel. This issue of domestic violence and violence against women is one of the main issues that we handled.
אני חושבת שאנחנו צריכים להיות מאוד ערים לאוכלוסיות שהן נחלשות בתקופה של משבר וקורונה, ואחת האוכלוסיות שנחלשות מאוד זה האוכלוסיות של הנשים. אני חושבת שהקורונה שמה לנו מול הפנים שהאי שוויון של נשים הוא הרבה יותר גדול. זה גם הוביל אותי להרחיב את תוכניות העוני בתחום הנשים, הוביל אותי להרחיב הרבה מאוד שירותים בתקופת הקורונה בנושא אלימות במשפחה. אני חושבת שהנושא הזה גם בעניין של מודעות של המשרד, גם בעניין של מודעות שלי מקבל הרבה מאוד בולטות.
As an advocacy organization, the fact that we can bring millions of shekels into a certain subject and to provide assistance to hundreds and thousands of women is something that is priceless in that matter.
The hotline is dedicated to provide legal aid for women at work regarding all aspects of labor law and employment law. The vast majority of workers being fired or being forced to take an unpaid leave are women.
אני מנהלת משאבי אנוש ושכר של חברת תיירות. קורונה תפסה אותי בתקופה של תחילת ההיריון יחסית. יצאתי לחופשה ללא תשלום. המשמעות של לצאת לחופשת לידה מחופשה ללא תשלום, זה שהדמי לידה שלי חושבו לפי התקופה שהייתי בחל"ת, שבה המשכורת שלי הייתה 70% ממה שהרווחתי בשוטף. וזה פחות כסף ל-15 שבועות שאני אמורה לחיות מהשכר הזה עם תינוקת ו3 ילדים. חד-הוריות, אין להם דרך להתקיים בכזאת צורה. כל התקופה הזאת השפיעה עליי מאוד 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 לרעה, והייתי רואה שחור פתאום, והתעלפתי משהו כמו 6-7 פעמים. נפלתי במדרגות, בחדר שינה, והם החליטו לאשפז אותי בהיריון בסיכון. השדולה עזרה לי בהתנהלות מול משרד הכלכלה והרווחה, שלבן אדם רגיל מהשורה לא ידע להתמודד איתם.
My feminist vision is that everyone, a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, will do whatever they want and not be blocked because of their gender.
Thank you, Dana, so much for your presentation.
So thank you, and we have a lot of challenges. I wanted to say that we have a lot of challenges, but we must be optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that Debbie and Samah, as we said, are part of Connecting for Impact, the cohort of CEOs that meet once a month to collaborate, to learn, and to work together on violence against women. And Dana is actually not part of this cohort, but IWN is one of our grantees that we support over the last few years. So we're really, really proud and work with her and work with the organization to help them do the wonderful and important work they do on advocacy and lobby and being really, really crucial in the field. Thank you so much. All of you. It was a wonderful, wonderful presentations, and I'm sure there is already a few questions, very good questions that we can open to everyone. So Carol, I think it's your role now.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Before we start, can I just ask everybody to go into the participants list, and they'll see by some technical glitch, it says Angelique Pinedo, where your name should be. Could you edit that out and put your name in, and also where you are in the world, please? And now I've got some questions in the chat, and let me see. Here is one.
So how does the government deal with honor killing?
Maybe Samah, that's for you. Like,
yeah. So the our problem is that again, the terminology, it's gender-based crime, and it's not honor, because we tell the story of each woman, and women were murdered because they want their inheritance, or it's fight about the boys or the kids after divorce, after nasty divorce, and this is something universal. Women is killed because someone wants from them something. So the government have to also to change the state of mind, how to treat gender-based crimes inside the Arab society. This is one of the struggles that I think that we are making progress in that, especially with the police officers, the press release that we heard, and the argument or debates that taking place inside the Knesset, for example. So we are making progress of how to treat or to approach this crime. The main significant problems that we are facing is solving the problems of the cases of femicide. 80% of crimes against Arab women are not solved, and 100% of crimes against Jewish women, someone is paying the price. So this is a kind of discrimination that we always have to put on the table, that the Jewish officers in the police and in the justice system treat Arab women differently when we are talking about these crimes. So 80% of the perpetrators, criminals who take lives of Arab women, are free, and this is really awful. It's like it's not enough that we are 50% of the victims, and they are treating after the crime. They are dealing with the crime scene and the evidence, and all the processes is one big, ongoing mistake. And this is something that we are really do good job, like advocating and put the numbers and argue the system about that. And I hope that we are making difference. The other thing that we convinced actually the government to treat, or at least to declare, that there is supposed to be special programs for gender-based gender education in the Arab society, and to dedicate money and funds for social services for victims from the Arab society. In the social services, the formal one, we are 40% and of the people who go to their services and try to get some help. And 50% of the women in the women's shelter are Arab. And we are, as you know, we are only 20% of the population. So if we are over represented in the list of the victims, we have to be the same rate of funding. So this is one of the struggles that we are trying to convince the parliament and the welfare ministry to keep in their mind when they approve any budget of fighting gender-based crimes in Israel. And in that terms, in that issue, Arab women and Jewish women are facing the same problem, that we are every year they promise us so many programs and funds and big like long-term plan for 5 years that they approved in 2017, and now we got like 5 years after, or 4 years after, we only have 30% released funds for that issue. So in that terms, we are in the same boat. And this is, as I told you, it's the ongoing battle. It's still, the government is not sensitive for this issue. They have to learn a lot, and they have to collaborate and cooperate with the women organization on the ground. So
thank you.
Also, there was a government program, national government program from 2017.
This is what I was saying.
Yes. And they promised a budget of 50 million per year, and 125 million. And we really try to fight to get this budget, and it's really not happening. It's only promises, and it's really frustrating. And in the period of the coronavirus, when we saw that we talk about it, that the violence was more than doubled, we got only 40 million, less than what was promised to a regular year with no corona. So it's really a problem.
And it's not that we got the money, it's so
Yes, the government.
People here will think that we got, the checks and dollars. Yeah,
No.
yeah. So we're talking about the formal services, not the
welfare
non-profit organization.
And yes.
Please.
Thank you. Carol, any more questions?
Yes, yes, many. So somebody on the same topic, somebody said, are your organizations funded in any way by the government, and what is the government funding towards helping women's issues, if at all?
Maybe Debbie, you can share if the government is giving any money to the topic or to the centers.
Okay, so the way it works is the Ministry of Welfare, we can put in an application, and usually about 15 to 20% of our budget will come from the Ministry of Welfare. But the problem is, even though the money is supposed to come in January, often it will come in at the end of the year. So we have to build a budget around money that comes in. Now, this was bad, but it was livable. Unfortunately, we have not had a government for 2-3 years. And so therefore, none of this is happening. So we put pressures on Knesset members to maybe push some money through. But here we are in 2020, and we haven't even had the 21, I'm sorry, we haven't even had the applications yet to apply for the government funding in 2021. So we haven't had an application to apply for what will only be 15% of our budget. So you can imagine, here we are dealing with a 500% increase and getting no money from the government, because right now what the government does is puts money towards another election and then another election, sorry to say.
So moving on from that, somebody wants to know, does Israel have universal health care? Is abortion on demand legal? Is it covered by your health insurance? Is sex education for boys and girls mandatory in all Israel's public, religious, and private schools?
Okay, so I will take that. Gender education is not mandatory in the public system, of course, not the private schools. So it's optional. So it's like you have to do something, and you have to do once a year, like in the International Women's Day or the International Day for Fighting Violence Against Women. Usually this is the 2 days that they invite us in. And when we work with I'm talking about the NAM and lots of other feminist organizations, we have to bring the funding with us. So we have to fund the facilitators, the movies, the activities, and to offer like free thing, and then we might have a chance. So it's not mandatory, and it's optional yet. And I don't know about the religious sector. I can imagine what's happening there, but I'm not sure. So this is the thing. What was the other question about
abortion?
Yeah, the abortion is we have if you have to do it legally in Israel, there is a committee in the health system that have to deal and to argue, and we have to convince as social workers the committee that usually have social workers, psychologists, doctors, gynecologists, and why this woman deserve to have a free abortion. This is also like lots of places around the world, private business that women try to avoid this committee and to do it like their own money. The most challenging thing that we have recently is that the Orthodox Jewish Knesset members with the Islamic Knesset members, of course, men do know how to collaborate together without, if it's against women, they wanted to enforce a religious figure to be in that committee and to take their recommendations. So if I'm Muslim, I have to bring sheikh to the committee. If I'm Jewish, I will bring rabbi, and we have to pay for him. So it's like bring it like to open free, like extra job places to religious figures to decide about abortion. We managed to stop that law temporarily. I hope that that it will not pass. So so abortion is stated, it still can be done, and this is a bureaucracy that lots of women try to avoid, you know, and do it privately.
And how about universal health care?
Just a second,
Universal
Dana, you wanna
healthcare.
add to that?
No, I want
Okay,
to say
sorry.
about gender equality education. I know the manager of the Department of Gender Equality in the Ministry of Education, and she really doesn't get not enough budget, not enough employees, and
Funds,
it's really she really needs help. She asked us to help her. And when we can't make progress with the government, so what we try to do in the IWN is to work with the local authorities. We have a program with the Tel Aviv municipality of program of gender mainstreaming, and also about one of the things, education, and also not short with budget. But we really hope it will be.
Debbie, you want to add anything to those questions?
Well, personally, I have not found getting an abortion for anybody who comes to us difficult. Yes, it has to go to a committee, but it is actually, we have not found that any woman who has wanted to didn't get the abortion. So that I have to say. As far as healthcare, there is free healthcare for everybody. Obviously, a lot of people choose to go private as well. But in that sense, we are pretty lucky in the sense that even people who don't have any money do get at least minimum health care and hospitalization. Not to mention the fact that we're on the top as far as vaccinations, which is making a lot of us feel good.
I have to add about the health, the universal health insurance, that undocumented women, in like Arab women, Palestinian women who's married to Israeli do not have it. So
Yes.
it's taking the having the universal health care. It depends on your personal status, legal status as citizen, residents, temporary residents, visitor. So it depends, and we have around 35,000 families like who are undocumented, so we all have this problem in that, you know, in that unique group of women.
So somebody else is asking in the chat, how many work hours do you work on average in Israel? What is your average work week hours?
The average work week is
and what's minimum wage? Do you have minimum wage?
The average work week is 40.6. And there are a lot of men that work even more than 50 hours per week. And we have legislation that protects labor law, also a minimum wage, but it's not enough.
Right. And what about women's shelters? Are they prevalent in all socioeconomic conurbations all over the country?
Okay, so we have 13 shelters, and now under the corona we managed to you know, enforce actually the welfare services to open emergency shelter, extra one. 2 of them are dedicated to the Arab society, and I think one of them for the Orthodox women, and the other, like the list is open for everyone. We can send Arab women to Jewish shelter if we don't have a place. So we're trying to not to leave anyone behind. And it's national level, so it's like a network. It's not enough. We have waiting list actually, and for the last 30 years we couldn't open like a new shelter. So you can imagine the increasing number and the growth of the population as well. But in Israel, we have like 14 now, like 14 shelters in the national level.
Right, so Barry Lynn, may I ask you to be spotlighted? Because I think the meeting is officially over, but please wait, everybody. We have a surprise for you. Barry Lynn.
Sure. Thank you, Carol. First, I just would very much like to thank all of the panelists. I'm sure everybody has learned so much from all that you have talked about. And I'm sure many people are making comparisons to some of their own work here in the United States, because I know for fact that some of the people on this call have worked in domestic violence, have worked in sexual abuse, have worked on gender equity issues in the United States. So I think this has been incredibly informative, and I can really feel the passion from all of you of your work. In a few minutes, we will extend the length of this meeting. For those of you who would like to stay on, there are still some questions in the chat that have not been answered, but officially, I would like to give some closing remarks. So if some people whose schedules will not permit them to stay, that they can feel comfortable leaving. So I know that there was a little hiccup this morning because those of you in Israel hadn't realized that we went to daylight savings time on Sunday. And so I guess we're not 6 hours apart, we're 7 hours apart. Am I correct on that? I can't hear you.
It was 7, but now it's 6.
Now
right?
it's 6. Right. Okay. And of course, my clock said, when I looked it up today, it said 6 hours. So I didn't realize that there had been that.
Okay. We're all here.
So I really appreciate all of you being on this call, because I know that, you know, that's a hard thing to deal with. Even just 1 hour is a hard thing to deal with. I want to compliment Liron and all of the work you're doing for NCJW on the ground with all of these wonderful women really working for gender equality and equity for women. I also want to thank Carol, who is NCJW Bergen County's chair of Israel Affairs. And Carol is incredibly passionate about Israel. And she has worked incredibly hard with Liron to make this program possible. And she has given attention to every single detail. We have sent out at her direction many, many e-blasts to many groups of people. And she just has given her full support every minute to this program. So thank you, Carol. I want to give a huge shout out to Angelique Pinedo, who many of you have adopted her name today somehow. Angelique is our administrative director of our section, and she is our Zoom technician extraordinaire. So she has been learning Zoom since March, and I hope you can have all seen how astute she is. All of the videos came on time. She has the screen right now with 5 of us actually spotlighted. And thank you, Angelique. There would be no program without you. So as I said, there are some more questions in the chat. And before we go to them, I just want to thank everyone who came today. We look forward to Zooming with you in April. We hope many of you will be able to be with family and friends during the upcoming holiday season. And we wish a happy Passover to those who celebrate. I do think that we can say that the world is definitely brighter today than it was a year ago. And I hope that we are all off to new beginnings. So with that, I will turn it back to the chat and I'll let Carol and Liron continue. How's that?
Thank you, Barry Lynn. I want to add my thanks to everybody and to Barry Lynn. We had some fun working on this project together, and I hope we'll do many, many more. So if Liron agrees, can we open up the floor and have everybody put their hand up and just speak? Like we were hanging out after an in-person meeting, which we often do. How does that sound?
Of course.
Okay,
We have,
so-
I guess, in terms of the time for the speakers, we have like 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if anyone wanna have more questions or remarks,
Let's do it informally. And,
Yes.
and Angelique, you can spotlight the people who speak. So I think the answer is just speak up. Don't type it in the chat anymore. Say it and we'll spotlight you. Let's see you guys. Who wants to say something?
I have a question.
Please give your name.
Excuse me for 1 minute. I see our distinguished senator is on.
Yes,
Senator
that's why I said.
Weinberg, the floor is
That's why-
yours.
That's why I said, please give your name, Senator.
Well, my apologies to whomever we just interrupted. My name is Loretta Weinberg, and yes, I'm a state senator and the majority leader of the New Jersey State Senate, but more important, a life member of NCJW. So I just wanted to tell you that this program was fabulous and gives me hope not for our collective future. If I could wave the magic wand that I am sometimes called upon to try to wave, I would put this group of women in charge of Israel starting tomorrow morning. And all our problems would be solved. Might take you a week or two, but I have faith that it would work out. And I visited one of my visits to Israel way back in the 90s, maybe 93 or 94. I actually visited a shelter for domestic violence victims. And I know when I came back right here in our country, there was kind of a late observance from the Jewish community that domestic violence was a problem in our community, as in every community. And I always pointed to, well, I don't know, I visited a domestic violence shelter in Israel and it was pretty filled up. That was always my answer to leaders of the Jewish community who would say, oh, we don't have a domestic violence program here. But I want to thank each and every one of you for the constant battles that I know you're in every single day and the improvements you're making for women in Israel. And I just had a moment when Debbie was speaking and said her face lit up. She said it was so wonderful to be able to connect with young Israeli feminists. And your face kind of lit up the screen, Debbie. That moment, we became sisters. So that's how I feel about this. So I just wanted to tell you we're a little bit ahead of you in the fight, but then we've got women like those from NCJW who come to our legislative sessions, speak up, speak out, and help us get these laws passed. So I just want to say thank you. And to know that somehow around the world we're united. So thank you for giving me the floor. And most of all, thank you for doing this program. I have already posted it on Facebook with your pictures. Because you know, if it's not on Facebook, it hasn't happened. So I already did that to show how technologically advanced I am. So thank you again, and thanks for these few moments.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Weinberg. And so would someone else like to speak? Elizabeth, you have a question. Elizabeth? Okay, who else wanted to speak?
I have a question. This is to Dana. Is she still with
This
us?
is Gladys Layden. Yes, hi Gladys.
Is Dana still with us?
I don't see her. I think she may have, I don't know. I think we lost her.
I am here. No, I'm
You're
here.
here. Didn't see you.
Okay. Dana, I was wondering, in your general gender equality issues, what kind of support are you getting from men in general, not necessarily members of the Knesset, and rabbis in the Orthodox community?
For men, not enough, unfortunately. I think they really should be part of our efforts. There are several members of the Knesset that are men that really are feminist and with us, but it's not enough. About the Orthodox, I really want to collaborate with those who can also in the Orthodox population to really make also collaborations and to work together, because there are a lot of voices in the also in the Orthodox, and there are, it's not all together the same voice. There are extremists and there are less extremists, and I think it's really important. It's something that I intend to do. It's an important point.
Maybe I could add something. I think one of the biggest changes we see in the Orthodox community is that the women today are getting educated and working. Because the men are sitting and learning Torah, the women can't afford to just get mediocre jobs. So they're actually getting educated in high-tech jobs, and they're actually working. Of course, their salaries don't even compare to the men. But, and of course, they still have to go home and do the housework. We're not saying that everything is perfect, but we are seeing a drastic change that young Haredi women are getting educated and are going out to the workforce in exorbitant numbers. So that's something positive that we are seeing.
It's
So,
positive.
thank you. So, sorry.
You must remember parties that, Orthodox parties that are only with the men. They're still not allowing women to be part, and we really try to help them in their efforts to do it also in the Supreme Court. So there are a lot of problems in this field.
Do you think that in time you will have separation of religion and state? Is there a movement towards that? Is anybody advocating for that? No.
Separate states for religious and not religious?
Make it the law that you have to have separation of religion and state in your government.
Unfortunately, I don't think it will happen. We see a trend of Orthodox and of conservative in Israel, also in the parliament, and unfortunately I don't see it happen. It's they really have a huge political power, and I don't see it happen.
Do you think an election might change that? The upcoming election?
Well, I
No,
have to say
no.
something. I have to take this. The next election, I really wanted to leave the room, but I just heard the question, so I stick around. So thank you for the question. The only party who advocate for secular or modern country is Hadash, and it's on their agenda to separate religion from the law, and to have a civil state, that controlled by the legislation process with the law, regardless of the religion. So this is formal, but it's still it's in the right, the left, and it's of course merits as well. They have the same agenda. So probably they won't be in the government. So, but it's on their agenda actually, and the feminist activists inside the Arab list facing a hard time with this clear agenda, and this is something that we have to advocate for the sake of all of us, Arab and Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish women, I believe. So thank you all for the invitation.
Thank you, Samah, so much.
I hope I say it in my lifetime. Thank you.
Maybe you wanted
so-
to add something around that?
Thank you.
I don't think it will
Samah.
happen. As long as we have coalition governments that need the ultra-religious to be part of their government, it's not going to happen. So we have to wait and see if we can finally get a government that could stand on his own and not need all these little parties to come together.
So everybody, I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person one day. When there's the next time there's an Israel mission, I'll be the first to sign up. And I just want to say thank you. It has been so wonderful. I hope everybody has enjoyed it as much as I have. And thank you and goodbye and shalom and be well.
Thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Carol, again, for everything, for all the work you did. It was such a pleasure working with you and putting this program together. And we're looking forward to continue the work that NCW is doing in Israel with our IGP, with Connecting for Impact, and with all our partners on the ground. So thank you so much for everyone who attend, and have great Passover for the one who celebrate, and health to everyone. So thank you so much.
Bye-bye.